My last myth I want to debunk is that Hamilton wanted manufacturing primarily to make the rich richer. The facts are these. In listing the advantages of manufacturing in Paterson and America, Hamilton used the following words. First, additional employment to classes of the community not ordinarily engaged in business. The promoting of immigration from foreign countries. Remember, a lot of the other founders were nativists, and Hamilton believed that immigrants made America stronger. The furnishing of greater scope for the, and these are his words, in the 1790s, the diversity of talents and dispositions which discriminate men from each other. As Ron Chernow said one day in Paterson, President Obama could use these points verbatim in one of his speeches today. And to some degree did yesterday in Miami. My son tells me where he's campaigning and the president spoke. Hamilton's unprecedented business plan for Paterson lowered the barrier to entry for entrepreneurs and immigrants looking to begin careers in manufacturing. The business plan that Hamilton came up with was this private corporation, which had a lot of quasi-public powers built into it as well, would secure large private investments to purchase all the land around the falls. And Hamilton did a good job of helping to raise that money among the wealthy people that he knew in New York and in Philadelphia. The investors would then make their money by renting out mill sites and water power accompanied by those mill sites to manufacturers, sometimes building new factories to rent them out. And if a fledgling manufacturer couldn't afford rent but had a very promising idea, Hamilton's charter gave the S.U.M. the opportunity to accept stock in the startup manufacturing company instead of rent. The flotation of these securities in the S.U.M. Would be called by one senior official of the SEC recently the first IPO in America. I'm actually not sure that that's true, but it certainly was one of the first. But this SEC official pointed to Hamilton's meticulous lawyer-like drafting of the powers and also the disclosures of the risk, the business plan, but also the fact that, hey, it's going to lose money in the early years. And yeah, we need some other powers too, like having a lottery so that we can make up some of the losses in the early years. And it was a brilliant piece of lawyering, combining a lot of practical business and political expertise as well. Now, what this business model did in lowering the barriers to entry meant that the industrial class of Paterson was different from the later New England mill towns like Lowell, where the rich Boston Brahmins with names like Lowell and Cabot and Lodge would basically build all the factories and the hydropower systems themselves, and they were already rich, but they would become richer and cement their position on the top of Boston society. Give money to their charities like Harvard and Mass General, but really, most importantly for them, keep their place at the top of the social pecking order of Boston. Well, the Paterson model was very different. First of all, it was a generation earlier. Secondly, it goes back to a founding father who came here with nothing. And third, this phenomenon of immigrant entrepreneurship would be studied seriously by a then new magazine called Scientific American in the mid-19th century, and by the 20th century, a great social historian, Herbert Gutman. And what these studies concluded, looking at the industrial magnates of Paterson in 1840, 1850, 1860, 1870, 1880, 1890, is that rags to riches was not a mere myth in Paterson. Virtually every single one of the industrialists started with nothing in Paterson. They were immigrants, often very young, often orphans. They had ideas. Some would succeed well beyond their wildest dreams, and they would become among the wealthiest people in America. Some would fail as well, and some would fail initially, but then become very, very successful later on. That's the story of our friend Sam Colt. Now, nearly all of these successful industrialists started in Paterson and lifted themselves out of poverty, and a lot of other opportunities for immigrants were created. Hamilton's vision of economic independence and an industrial America provided opportunities for all. And for more than 150 years, we're talking about tech, for more than 150 years, Paterson embodied Hamilton's vision. But then it fell victim to the widespread decline of manufacturing in America. Growing up in the 1950s and the 1960s, and seeing cute girls from School 21 and Eastside High like Renee Green, well, we had a front row seat to that decline. We went to Eastside High School, later portrayed in the movie Lean on Me, with Morgan Freeman playing the principal who ruled with a baseball bat. And race riots broke out in the streets around the school, buildings burned, the middle class fled to the suburbs. And though my parents toughed it out in Paterson, my mother continuing to complain, but my parents toughed it out in Paterson, and I went off to college and law school, eventually becoming a partner at one of the world's largest law firms in Washington, D.C. I'd visit my parents regularly in Paterson, and I saw things get worse and worse and worse. One federal agency, where I would later work, called Paterson the most economically distressed city in America. Then in around 2005 or so, a United States Senator, Frank Lautenberg, and a Congressman, Bill Pascrell, both old family friends, both of whom grew up in Paterson. And they approached me in the same week with what seemed like a crazy idea to many. Let's make a national park in Paterson. The idea seemed like a joke to a lot of people. Paterson was a gritty, post-industrial city, the furthest thing imaginable from the Grand Canyon. But one of my law partners thought it was a good idea, actually, and he knew more about national parks than anyone I knew. Bruce Babbitt used to oversee national parks as Secretary of the Interior. He actually grew up near the Grand Canyon and was governor of Arizona. And his government office walls had displayed posters of beautiful national parks like Yosemite and Yellowstone. And he gave me some valuable advice. He said that creating a new national park required someone who was reasonably smart, hardworking, and an unrelenting pain in the ass. So my wife said I was well qualified. And I had read Ron Chernow's Hamilton biography, which has a chapter in it on Paterson called City of the Future. So I was all in. I organized historians, including Ron Chernow and Dick Silla, Rick Brookhiser and others, national organizations like the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the National Parks Conservation Association, and a variety of other experts to testify before Congress. I drafted the legislation, only time I actually drafted legislation, and testified in the House and the Senate. And after some years of work, off on the side of my big law practice in a little tiny pro bono project, I went to the White House to see the President of the United States sign our legislation. And today, my office displays posters from Yellowstone, Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, and the Paterson Great Falls National Parks. And yes, you do get a poster if you become a member of the Hamilton Partnership. But even if you don't, you get a piece of a birthday cake, more on that later, which takes advantage of that image on its face.